Good morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Avignoni.
bringing you this week's Ascended World Collective Energy Share. I'm just pulling up my phone since that's the only place I ever see any comments. Here we go.
Right.
Here we go. There we go. All right.
Let me turn off my notifications.
Yeah.
No dinging.
No dinging. Well, constantly dinging, but
Right.
different ways. Okay. So I don't even remember how we even got to where we got to on Friday to start this conversation, but
I think it was something that my sister and I were talking about, and I said, I don't know. I was talking about how I've never had a problem with shampoo and conditioner
oh, right. Yeah.
bothering me and breaking out my skin, and it's like, my entire life, I used what I wanted to use, and I've become more conscious of ingredients and things like that. But my daughter said something to me about how, everything but this particular shampoo breaks her scalp out, and her neck and her face and her back. And I was like, wow, that's odd. And then I started and I was like, what's that about? And my sister said, oh, we're just extreme empaths. And I said, yeah, you'd think we could do something about that. And so we started.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep. And because this has been I don't want to say a point of contention, but it has been something that comes up a lot. Because I mean, not with you. I mean, this was a point like that we've talked about for a long time. Right. So let's do the 5, like the 2-minute thing on being empathic. Right. Because really what we're at now, and this is sort of like last week when I did my Thursday Living the Shift podcast and said, okay, we're going to talk about listening to guidance versus ego. And this isn't a basic one though. This is like the next level. This is what this is too. Because that's what I said when we were talking. I'm like, nope, this is the next level too. So we're not going to talk about the specifics of the basics of being empathic, except that it just has to do with, because the understanding is that those who would be drawn to watch this would already understand what we're talking about.
Exactly. Right.
So, but the thing is, it has become a catchphrase in the spiritual community, right?
Right.
And even in the peripheral spiritual community, like people who are just like on the the edges.
Right.
And you hear that term all the time, and it's like, oh, and we use it in a term of victimhood.
Exactly.
And that is the thing to shift for us.
Right.
Because
it's like a badge of courage kind of thing.
Right. Because it's like, oh, well, I can't help it. I'm just so empathic. There are so many courses. There are so many, like books. There's so many like things out there now about how to deal with being empathic. How,
Survive it.
So yeah, surviving being empathic, and which I find interesting. So many, like that I've had this conversation with over the years. It's funny because they're like, oh, well, you just don't understand. It's like, but I do. I really do understand, because I was like I went through 4 phases so far that I can major ones in this life, which was as a child, I was a big marshmallow sponge because I sponged up everybody else's stuff around me.
Right.
So then what did I do as self-defense is I created a steel wall around me for a number of years and became the complete opposite. And then when I had my grand awakening, there it was again. The whole thing came down, and then I became the sponge again. And then the 4th stage, which is what I've been in now consistently for a while, is getting to the next level of that connection. Because of course, the funny thing is, what for us to look at is we're all empathic because we're all connected.
Right.
Absolutely. It's how much we allow ourselves to feel it.
Right.
And when people use the term empathic, usually in this context, right, what does it mean? Like what your sister said, oh, we just can't help it. We're a victim to being so empathic, right? And yes, some feel more than others, some take on more than others, and it all has to do with their individual journeys and where they are in their journey, right?
Right.
So where we are now, like we've talked a lot over, the last several months, especially, that we've walked through this new doorway, we've shifted into this new place, into this new creation of a new overlay that is becoming more and more tangible as we go. And all of this stuff we're being brought back to revisit, right? All the
Right.
stuff we've been talking about, because this is like a next level kind of thing. This is a next level thing. It's time to wash away all the old stuff to say, okay, well, what do we utilize with this that causes it to be a power and not a victimhood?
Exactly. Exactly. I know I used to think that my emotions were my biggest weakness. And then when I had my spiritual awakening, it became, oh, well, this is my strength. And it was my, I was able to tap in, and I was able to feel others' emotions. And now it's come full circle again to the point where it's like, yeah, I feel theirs, but not mine. I have pushed everything out, and now it's time to pull it back in and say, where am I? Who am I?
So one of the things, right, and one of the things you and I talked about on Friday that's really important right now, I just totally lost that thought.
Well, it's becoming looking at everything within yourself, because
Right. Well, the identity around it, right? Because we've now, that's right, because I wrote this down in my journal from our discussion. We have now exalted the victimhood of being empathic, right?
right, right.
When really what was funny was because you were typing the notes on your phone and you said, funny, when I went to type in exalting, my phone tried to correct it to exhausting.
Right. It did. It did.
And I was like, that's so perfect. Right.
It is exhausting. It is
So,
exhausting, and it becomes overwhelming to think, okay, I can't deal with my problems, and I'm everybody, so I have everybody's problems.
right. And that's a concept that we get, right? But then here's the thing, the ego is inserted into that
Right.
because the ego says, for me to be valuable and truly to be perceived by others as connected, I have to take on other people's stuff, right? And that's an ego thing, because, and the implication there is I have to take on other people's stuff so that I'm valuable, right? So that I show that I'm powerful, you know,
Right. Or at
that,
least I have to show signs of being aware and influenced by other people's stuff,
right.
so that that gives me legitimacy.
Right. In my victimhood.
Right. Right.
We'll just keep on adding in my victimhood, because that's really what the whole thing is. It's like that.
The new victim. Right.
Yeah, it's sort of like the fortune cookie game, right? You add in bed at the end, it's like in victimhood, right?
Right.
so, so, what I have worked on, and so what has been the practice for me, and what I've been guided to do for a long time now, has been to, because when this all first opened up, it was overwhelming again, um, and I was shown through my own guidance that it's not productive. It's not productive. B, it's not productive in so many levels, because taking on something for somebody else prevents them from completing their journey as planned. And if they are you and a part of you, why would you do that? Why
Right.
would,
Which goes back to what we talked about last week, which is honoring their journey.
yes,
So by not allowing them that, you're not honoring their journey in yet another way.
right. Right. And where that comes from is what? Is judgment, which is ego, which
Right.
is judgment of, oh, well, I'm better off than them. They're worse. I have pity for them. I have to show that I love them,
Right. Right.
implied wise, so that they can love me, so that I show that I'm valuable being loved. I have to show that I love them. I have to, yeah, I have to fix things, right? I have to fix things. It's,
Right.
if I don't fix them, nobody will, right? That's
Right.
also an ego
And
thing.
a lot of it is, that's your value ascription. is doing for others,
Mm-hmm.
and in projecting and taking on other people's problems, you become more valuable to your family, to society.
Well, and it's like the idea of I don't know if we talked about this on Friday or if it was Monday's call last week, but it's the idea of like why we sometimes get sick because we believe
Yeah.
we have to be a part of the human. That was on the
Condition.
call. Yes, you have to be part of the human condition, and if we're not a part of the human condition, which includes what do we consider the human condition? It includes suffering and overcoming huge obstacles and um, like standing up when you've been hit down. Like we so sensationalize all of that, right?
Right.
You know, and the human condition is also what that we have the misery loves company
Right.
thing, right?
Absolutely. Right.
And so many of us have the beliefs in there, and this all comes down to these beliefs of what we have to do to be valuable because we don't believe we're valuable as we are, right? Without that.
Right.
Yeah. And so we'll take on, and so that's part of being what we call empathic, would be taking on sickness too.
Right. Well, and a lot of people feel like in order to judge someone, I need to better understand what they're going through, so then I can be in a position to judge. Whereas if
Right.
you just don't judge, that it you
Well,
don't have.
or on the other hand, I have to take on what somebody else has so that I can understand them.
Right. Right.
Because we do believe that. And people think if you haven't gone through what I've gone through, you just don't understand.
Right. You aren't in a position to judge.
Right. Ooh, my phone just fell off. But yeah, so that's a really big thing in terms of empathy. And so people say, I can't help it. You can help it. Right. So the first thing is recognizing what's going on. Right. So
Right.
one is like if you're around people and it makes you feel bad, if like even like we talk about this in the spiritual, it's like, oh well, my heart weeps for this collective, or my heart weeps for these animals, right? There's a big one. The animals is a big thing.
Right. Right. The helpless.
What we believe is the helpless, right?
Right.
That's the
Right.
judgment, because
Right.
there is no helpless. We're all the infinite. It's all different facets of ourselves, right? And again,
Right.
it's that honoring. And it's like, well, so how can you say like somebody who's been abused and like, and it's like, you know what? There's a difference between, and this is what we got to, was talking about taking the word empathic to shift it to really what it was originally supposed to be, which is being connected, right?
Right.
And what I learned through my practice and my self practice and what I have done and been able to mostly master, not always, but most of the time master, is feeling and knowing what's going on by others, but
Right.
not taking it on as mine.
Right. Or getting so deeply involved in it that you lose yourself in it.
Right. Right. Well, and you misidentify it as your own.
Right.
Because
Or not even identify it, but subconsciously identify with it, which I think that's where a lot of people get tripped up, is that they're not even aware that they're taking it on.
right. Right. And so, well, and then when they're told, right, because then there's the catchphrase of, are you empathic? Let me help you deal with that. Let me help you, and most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, a lot of people who practice, we talk about that, be like, oh, well, you just have to shield yourself. And it's
Right.
like, no, because that's putting in more separation, and
Right.
people have
Right.
come to me and I've talked about it. I'm like, so the thing for you to realize and set yourself in energetically is, I hold my own space. I am responsible for my own space and I hold it at my own vibration. And
Right.
we can match and we can connect without me taking on your stuff. I can see it and feel it and know it without
Right.
it being mine.
Right. And
'Cause
that encompasses everything that we talked about last week, and then what we're talking about now is honoring their journey, but
yes,
at the same time being able to provide the mirror and the insight and helping them on their journey.
yes. And I'll tell you, like there have been times where I know that something I was guided to be or do or whatever struck a deep chord with somebody, but like a trigger button, right?
Right. Right.
Because I can feel it. Because it's not that I can't feel it, because I can
Right.
feel it. I know when I've struck home, right?
Right.
Right. So the thing that has been the very fine line to walk is not to put the ego in it and to say, okay, well, just give me the perfect words to let this be the most,
Right.
exalted, whatever. And exalted is even ego based too. The most complete way of letting this be resolved, right? For them and for me, and what we wanted to learn our journey so we can move forward and not be stuck in this pattern, right? Or
Right.
cycle. Um, and the thing that came up that we talked about on Friday that was really good. See, I took good notes Friday. I have good notes sitting here.
Of course, mine are on my phone, and I've got my phone to write it on.
So I keep on looking down because I'm like, I have them right here. The other thing that was really important that came up when we were talking about this, and this is a big one, is that is where this is sort of like not what was typically focused on, but that's why it's so crucially important for us to go inside to get to that place of self-love, to also remember. And it was funny, as I brought up on Friday too, the like in quantum physics, like they look at the whatever we call God source, whatever is the quantum field, right?
Right. Right.
And it's and what they say in quantum physics is that no, we are not what our mind and bodies are. We are the observer of the consciousness in our mind and bodies, right? Which is
Right.
the creator of our realities. And that we can just turn that's how we create, is we just turn our attentions from that observation, not the emotion of the ego in the
Right.
individual, to other things. And that's how we create. And the thing is, for us to really focus, I mean, that's part of the meditation and going inside and quieting the chatter of the ego, is finding that centeredness, right? That
Right.
calmness, the detachment, the non-identity, right?
Mhm.
The wholeness and everything, and observing that within ourselves. Because if we can't be observant, just observant to our own stuff,
Right.
then how can we be observant to everything around us
Exactly.
without taking it on, right?
Exactly.
Right. So if we take our consciousness and we look at it, that next level of our higher self consciousness, as we want to call it, or whatever, in that observance. And I think even Eckhart Tolle talks about it in The Power of Now, and that's what the whole Power of Now was about. If you get to that place of observance and the non-emotional observance, which is that wholeness, is coming from a place of wholeness, and that really sort of is what unconditional love is all about, is okay, I'm just observing without judgment of any kind, right?
Right. Right.
And when you can do that, you can be, and we have talked about this so much too, is being able to observe our own emotions and not get stuck in them, right?
Right.
So then what the thing for us to master is being able to do that within ourselves, because when we can do that within ourselves, then we find it, it's effortless to do it with other people.
Right.
So for example, we were talking about somebody on Friday that I could feel that there was something going on, but my guidance was not for you to intervene, let them
Mhm.
figure it out, whatever. All you can do is hold a space of love, and you know that since we're all connected, it's going to affect whatever we do or whatever I do, and that whatever we do affects everybody else in some level, which is why we call this a collective share, right?
Right.
And it seems that it did, from interactions I had over the weekend, it seems that something did break on Friday. So I think that was funny. But you know, and then you said you've had this void feeling, and I think it's because we become so identified with that identity of
Absolutely. It's like, well, who am I now then? If my presence here is based on that that level of connection with others, especially like children and family and pets and things like that. And it's like when that's seen differently, it creates this, I don't want to say a vacuum, but it really creates this identity crisis.
Well, because you believed you filled yourself up with that before, right? So you believed that that's what was filling you up,
Right.
so that when you
And
take
then you
away,
look and it's like, well, then there's nothing here now. So who and what am I?
yeah,
And when that's when you rely on that self-love, and that's when you truly feel the depth or lack of depth in that area, because when you take away that level of connection with others, it's just you, which really all there is anyway.
right, right. Well, yes, we're never alone and we're always alone, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
Because in that connection, we recognize whatever you want to call it, the quantum field, God, source, divine consciousness.
Right.
And that's what we are. And there's nothing else. And at the same time, all the other facets are me too. So you're never alone at the same time. Right. So
Exactly. Yeah.
it's, and the thing is going, yeah, continuing on. And it is perfect in continuance on from what we talked about last Monday,
It
because
really is.
it is truly allowing ourselves to be where we are, right? And that's where, what happens a lot now, a lot of conversations I've had, right, is um how, and I have to look at this within myself, and
Absolutely.
all the time, is to make sure that our choices, what's really important for us in this consciousness, is to make sure our choices are for us, from our heart, from our center, and not to hold ourselves back, to empathize, to empathize with somebody else, to limit ourselves so that they don't feel bad. Like, and we do this like so subconsciously. So for us to pull observance to is like taking this big freaking spotlight and going, nope, and nope, and nope, and then you're right, and then it's like, right, but then the ego goes, but aren't we a bad person then? Aren't we bad? And like, isn't it bad for us to not do this? Isn't it bad for us to not be emotional? Right? Isn't it
Right.
bad for us to not do this? And I mean, it's so interesting, the little voice you'll hear, and then you're right, and then the voice is, well, then who are you?
Right. Right.
But aren't you just a robot then? Right?
It actually right now does feel kind of that way.
Yeah. Well, because
And
you're
it's
so
like
used
then
to,
it gets to then it goes to the question, well, then why am I here?
right. Well, and the whole thing, and the answer to that is, you're here to do you. You're here to do your journey and not everybody else's.
Exactly.
And the
Exactly.
thing is, at some very deep level, and this is so common for all of us, right, is to get to the place of saying, of realizing how much of our journey has been to do what we do for somebody else.
Exactly.
And that even includes, oh, I became a doctor or a lawyer because my parents wanted me to, or it makes my parents proud, or makes them feel, or I have to do this for a living so that my parents believe that I'm a good person, and that, I honor them for what they did for me. Like, and that's like this effort of showing that you love somebody. And it's like, except if you're not happy doing that,
Right.
that's not honoring anybody,
Right.
not even you.
Right.
So, but so peeling back, and it's funny because I pulled out a deck of cards that I haven't used in a while this morning, and it was funny because I didn't even really think about it. I just wrote it down because I was getting to my meditation. I was like, oh, let's just see what this comes up as, right? And it's a deck. It's called the Heart and Soul deck. It's an older one, and it's all like guardians or whatever, different kinds of energies and da da da.
Mm-hmm.
So the card that the card that actually fell out of the deck when I picked it up and was shuffling it, it was sort of like, yeah, I'm not even going to let you pick me. It's just
Right.
is the guardian of seekers, and it's seeking and finding your heart of hearts. And when you read in the book what it's about, is it was like, it's peeling away all the things you think are your motivations, that are all based in somebody else's stuff, which I was like, oh, look at how perfect this is as we get on
Right.
to do the empathy thing. It's peeling back everything to find your heart of hearts, which is your heart with nobody's influence on it, like what it
Right.
is that you are here to be, and to allow those other things to peel away freely, and and easily, and with acceptance, and being okay with it, to say, I'm okay. Like I've seen a lot over the years with people I've worked with. I've seen a lot of people who've left their marriages and have kids, or were in one situation with their kids where they stayed home with their kids, and their higher self was pushing them to go do do what their heart was telling them to, and they changed the whole, and there was all this guilt,
Right.
right? And they would come to me and be like, well, I'm starting to resent my kids, I'm starting to resent my husband, and I'm embarrassed to say that because I'm a bad person for doing that, because I'm staying home, because isn't that what I'm supposed to do?
Right.
And I'm like, well, listen to what you just said. What I'm supposed to do.
Says who?
Says who? Right. Says society, says culture, says your husband or your wife,
Or
even,
your
right?
or your mom.
Or your mom or your dad, or so many things. And it's like, well, and the beliefs then that come out of people's mouths are things like, oh, well, my kids won't get the best childhood, or they won't grow up to be good people, and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, if you don't stay home with them, but if you stay home with them and you resent it, it's not
What
going to make it.
what are you creating there?
What do you do is and you show your kids that it's okay to sacrifice yourself for everybody else, then you're just
Right.
perpetuating the problem.
Right.
So, and that's a big one in our society. But these are all, I mean, and this is all connected to this whole empathic thing, right? It's, part of the human condition, part of being connected. And then what did we talked about how we started with marriage, and then we changed to any relationship is not an exercise in empathy. Like that is what we have
Right.
devolved to, or gotten to a place of, is that we sort of see most of our relationships as exercises in empathy of some sort. And when we say that, what is that? Oh, well, I'm going to do that so they feel better, right?
Right.
I'm going to do that to help them feel better, or I have to do this so that they feel good about themselves. But what about you?
Right. All right. Or, I need to make them happy.
Right. I just wish I could make them happy. And I'm just like, and then what happens then is the expectation of a reciprocity, right?
Right.
Of
Right.
them trying to make you happy because you're trying to make them happy. And that is where all the letdowns always happen, because nobody makes anybody happy except for yourself.
Right. And then you get into expectations and tit for tat, and it just right. It's it's like you talked about writing the new book on relationships. It's like it's the breaking point of relationships right now.
Yeah. Well, and because we're coming to this point of saying, it's more important for me to be happy with me, to be happy with who I am, to be in a place of unconditional self-love, to say, I am complete and whole as I am now.
Right. Right.
I don't need this relationship. I don't need somebody to complete me. I don't need somebody to make me look like a valuable person. I don't need to be married or partnered or whatever, so that somebody else, so that I feel good about myself, so that because others think I'm worthwhile, right? I don't have to, there's just so many things. I don't have to I don't need to be a parent to show that I'm a worthwhile individual, like
Right.
in the society, right? Or I don't need to be a full-time parent. I don't need, well, you're always a full-time parent. I don't need to be a parent like above everything else.
Right.
Sacrifice all the rest of me to do that. I don't need to do that to be a spouse or a parent, or I don't have to give up my life for work either.
Right.
And by the way, I don't have to sacrifice my happiness for work. I can actually work. I can actually work in an area where I'm already happy and
Right.
passionate,
And imagine what the relationship would be like if two people came together from that place.
right. And that's what, I'll tell you, that's what that I think is the biggest key to success, because then it's like this, even then, if the relationship is over at some point, there's no regrets.
Right.
It's like, thank you. thank you. I honor that we've had this time together, this part of our journey. And now let's move on separately as we're guided. Like, oh, that feels so free, right?
Right.
Like we're here, we're not here. And it's it's something that I've been pushed to get to a place of, for years. It's like get to a place of that complete neutrality of having gratitude for every day, having gratitude for every moment, for every relationship, for where it is right this moment, and then having gratitude to move forward when you're guided to without that relationship in your reality. If that, and that includes everybody.
Right.
So, and that's a big, and so it sounds really simple. Like, yeah, it does sound really simple to say. It's a lot of practice because we're not used to that.
Well, and it's so ingrained in everything we observe.
Right.
There are no there's nothing to model your behavior around.
Right. Well, and it becomes it can be very contentious with other people because then they can't hook you into,
Right. Draw you in.
draw
Exactly.
you in, right? Or hook you into the uh, continuation, right? That's not the word I was looking for, but the continuation of the same energies, oh my gosh, I lost the word. Perpetuation,
Right.
right? The perpetuation of those, because if you're hooked in to my stuff, right, then I feel okay about being hooked into your stuff. Like, it's that kind of thing.
The reciprocity. Yeah. And that gets back to where we were last week talking about when you honor someone's journey at the same time honoring yours, and
Yes.
then they're like, but whoa, wait a minute.
Right. Right.
It's that same
Yes.
response.
Yes. And I felt it was funny because I realized in meditation this morning after you texted me and said that you've had like this crazy blah kind of weekend, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah. And I had, starting yesterday, I had this random anxiety that I was trying to put onto something, but I couldn't quite grasp onto anything. I'd be like, oh, I want to worry about this, but there's nothing to worry about. I want to worry
Right.
about that, but there's nothing to worry about. Like, it's all good. Right.
Oh,
And I woke up like 4 times last night. There's the yawn.
I know.
Oh, I woke up like 4 times last night and I was like, what the heck? And talking about this, it's like, well, and it was funny because this morning my daughter texted me early, the one who's away in college still, and she said, hey, you up? Which means there's something wrong, right? And I was
Right.
like, yeah. Yeah. So she calls me and she's telling me about she stubbed her toe badly like a week ago and it bled, and like she thinks the toenail's coming off, and she thinks it's gotten infected, right?
Mhm.
And she wanted to know what to do. So, or what she could do. And I gave her options. I said, this is what, to do. I was like, you could soak it in Epsom salt water, 3 times a day.
Right.
I was like, you could use apple cider vinegar in warm water 3 times a day, 15 minutes to dry it out and stuff. And it's good antiseptic. I'm like, and then I was like, do you have colloidal silver? Do you have, even peroxide? Do you have like that kind? And
Right.
she's like, oh no, I'm out of that. And I'm like, well, why have you not been treating this? Like, this stuff,
Right.
right? And well, what happened was she said that she's had it wrapped in a bandage, but she said because it's been so wet where she is, it's been raining so much, her feet keep on getting wet in her sneakers, and she's walking, and then she thinks it just gets gross, right?
Right.
So I said, okay. I said so, and she's working this morning before class, and then she has to work on a project with a classmate after class this afternoon. So she's got a really full day. And I said, how much time you have between work and class? And she goes, oh, I have to leave class. She's like, yeah, I have like an hour. I said, okay. And Whole Foods is 5 minutes from her work. So I'm like, okay, so go to Whole Foods, I was like, get some Epsom salts if you don't, like, 'cause she said, oh, I'll have some with lavender. And I'm like, no, you need plain Epsom salts
Right.
or you need apple cider vinegar with mother in it, whatever you choose. I'm like, you need to get yourself some peroxide and or colloidal silver if they have it. I think they usually have it, and they might have some kind of antiseptic ointment. That's a natural antiseptic ointment that you can use. I said, and if you really think it's infected, you might want to pick up a bottle of oil of oregano capsules and take, and I was
Right.
telling her like to take those internally as well. And I said, so do that. And then you can go home and you can soak your foot before you go to class. And she's like, I'm not gonna have time for that. And then she starts like telling me why she couldn't do all this stuff. Right. And then I started to get a little irritated, right? Because then you want to impose them, like the expectation of them doing it. I'm like, well, you know what? You called me.
Right.
You asked me for my recommendation. This is my recommendation. You can take it or you can leave it. Your choice.
Right.
But you knew I knew some stuff or else you wouldn't have called me.
Right. Exactly.
so, so I'm like, so I said, and I would recommend if it is already infected that you get started on soaking it and whatever as soon as you possibly can and not wait till tonight because every moment counts. I'm like, so if you can do it before you go to class, that'd be great. If not, that's your choice. But
Right.
that's all I'm saying. But and it was funny because and that's your child, right? Because your child and the child, you're like, oh, but you know, like, and there's an old me that would have been like, I'll come down there to Wilmington, you know, like I'll drop everything today, I'll cancel all my appointments, da da da. And I was like, do it or don't do it.
Right.
Your choice. You know, and that's really, and the thing is, it's not that I don't feel for her. Of course, then I go and feel into that one in meditation. And it's like, of course, she's graduating college and it's like, oh, look, there's the moving forward thing, right? No, it's
Yeah.
like,
Tripping her up.
trip herself up, right? Stubbing her toe.
Right.
So I was like, yeah, you know, whatever. And so I connected with her out there. I was like, yeah, if you want to change this, then change it, whatever. But it's funny because it's not that I was doing it for her. I was just like out there. And then it was like, okay, I put it out there for her out there, even like, here, take it or leave it.
Right.
Take it or leave it. So that's the whole thing is if you're guided to do something, you do it. That's where it comes down to being guided to do something, you do it. And if you're not guided to do it, you don't. Or if you're guided to not do it, you don't. And there's no emotion in it. And people can say this is not a human thing, right? It, you know, takes away your humanity. And it's like, well, but it doesn't take away my divinity.
Well, yeah, it just takes it to the next level.
Yeah.
And it gets closer to being that human being, not human doing.
Right. Right. And it's almost like the being part is the divine part, right? That we want,
Right.
that we've wanted to acknowledge, but never really realized that's what we were acknowledged by calling it, right?
Right.
So it's changing our whole definition of what humanity is, right?
Right.
What being human is.
Right.
And it's almost like, well, what if we shift that to that being divine embodied is really what being human is?
Right. Right.
And so, you know,
Not the one chasing the fires.
right. Or fixing everything or fixing, because fixing is also an egoic term that implies that you judge something is wrong or needs to be, you know, fixed or that you know better and you can fix it. You know, I even think about that when stuff happens around the house and I'm just like, you know what? I'm just not even going to go there. Cause you know, you think, well, I'm going to fix this.
Right. Right. Right.
But you become a lot more laissez-faire about that. But at the same time, it's like, well, but things in the 3D still need to be, you know, adjusted so they work properly. How's that one?
Right. Right.
But yeah, so I guess today is what we remember how to do that. Remember how to be connected in observation, free of taking on the emotions and yeah, emotions of others. Because that's really what it boils down to, right?
Right. And honor your journey in doing that. Because that's the ultimate journey.
And recognize that, by the way, it is important for you to honor your journey first and foremost, because that's what you're here to do.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. So all that in a nice little bow. Yeah, and I guess also, yeah, remembering. And the thing is, the void. What I'm getting is that the void you're feeling. Oh my God, there's the yawn again. Um, is the void of not spending energy on taking on that other stuff.
Right.
And it's like, well, instead of it being a void, how about now? Oh, well, look, I have this free space that I can fill
Right.
with my unconditional self love, right?
Right.
And be more me, be more of my divine self, you know?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Absolutely.
remembering how to do that too.
Absolutely.
All right, you ready?
I am.
Okay. out there. That was very different. I realized there was something I'd seen in meditation this morning that I understood now, because I saw me with my husband and my kids, and it was like they were standing in front of the cabinet where the glasses are, and they each had different glasses in front of them, right? But we each had each other's glasses. And I was like, oh, this makes sense. So in the meditation, I was like putting, like, I was like, here's yours back and give me mine, and here's yours back and give me mine, so that everybody had their own glasses lined up in their cabinet. And I was like, oh yeah, well, that's what that was. It's like, it's almost like, and I don't know why this was on my mind. It's like almost like we all have each other's silverware, right? And it's all mix and match. And it's like, okay, let's all straighten everything out now, because that's what we're doing, right? Essentially. And I'm like, that's a very oversimplified, way of, illustrating that, but it helps you to understand what it means when we talk about that. That's what we're doing.
Right. When you say you do you and I do me.
Yeah.
That's it.
Right. And then when you do you and I do me, look at how beautiful we are together.
Right.
Because then it's so effortless and free. That makes it a completely different experience. And what I got out there, because there was so much rumbling in the collective about this. I was like, it doesn't mean that we don't, like, right away you get these images of, oh, so then what's going to stop anybody from killing anybody else or hurting other people and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, yeah, but when you come from a place of wholeness, again, you have no desire to hurt somebody.
Right.
Because they're you and you want to honor their journey, right? Now, granted, when they hurt, that's a different story, because that's their trigger, right?
Right.
But when you come to something from a place of love and wholeness, it's a much different interaction. And it just changes and it's like really so limiting to try to explain that verbally, because it's a very different paradigm of existing.
Yeah. Well, it is. And it's the next thing. I don't know a better way to describe it, but it's the evolution, if you will, of humanity coming to that place.
Forks and knives and spoons, right? Everybody has, because just saying, okay, well, now you can function fully with your whole set, your own full set, right? And if I take it for you, then you don't have a full set. So,
right.
That's, and that makes sense in a very, practical way. So how about you? Was there anything else that came to you?
I saw the, that big void that I've been feeling, and I saw just almost like taking a hose, and it's like all these hidden, like, jewels and designs and such intricacy, and it's like that's what you've been hiding, and of course hidden in plain sight.
Right.
And it just felt like that was what is going on everywhere, is that getting pushed by your higher self to that place of, if there's nothing left, then look at what you have, kind of thing.
Right. And it's a completely different perspective, right? If there's nothing left to distract you,
right,
look at all you already have, right?
Yeah, believing that there's nothing left.
Right. Which is a great thing versus what we thought it was, right?
Right, exactly.
So, because that's when we can fully step into our destiny, like what we were talking about within the last couple of weeks, that stepping fully in confidence into our divine destiny kind of thing.
Yeah, and that fierce authenticity.
Yeah.
You don't even know what it is. How can you be fierce about it?
Right. If you don't have the whole set somewhere.
Right.
All right. Well, yeah, this is a powerful one. We're going to see where this one leads this week. I have a feeling this is a big shift.
Oh, I felt it coming.
Yeah. Yeah. So thanks everybody for joining us. This is Angela Coulter and
Sarah Sieg Evan Uni.
signing off on this week's Ascended World. Have a great one.
Bye-bye.